The rain fell slowly outside the glass windows of the coffee shop on Outpost 9. It was always raining here, cold and silent. Like the whole planet was sad. Jack Carson sat alone in a corner booth, drinking his black coffee without sugar. He had no one waiting for him. No mission today. No calls from command. Just an empty booth and a warm cup in his hands. He was a human cargo pilot. Nothing special. He flew broken ships full of supplies, between colonies often for low pay. He had seen many alien worlds, strange creatures, rich cities, and dead planets. But none of that ever filled the emptiness inside him. So, he kept flying, kept drinking coffee, kept avoiding questions. That night, the coffee shop was nearly empty. A few workers sat near the back, tired faces and dirty boots. A robot cleaner moved slowly across the floor, humming to itself. Jack looked out the window, watching the rain hit the lights outside. And then, the bell above the door rang. Everyone looked up. A figure stepped in wearing a soaked gray cloak, hood covering her face. She walked slowly, like her legs were too tired to move. Water dripped from her cloak onto the floor. Her presence felt strange. Not dangerous, but different. She wasn't human, that much was clear. She stopped just inside the door, scanning the room. Then her eyes, bright blue and glowing slightly, locked onto Jack. She walked toward him, each step careful, as if unsure if she was welcome. Jack didn't move. She reached his booth and without asking sat down across from him. Her hands were thin and delicate, with faint glowing lines running across them. Under her hood, he saw the edge of blue skin and silver hair. "Sorry," Jack said, not angry, just surprised. "This seat's open, but you okay?" She looked at him for a long moment. Then, with a quiet voice, almost a whisper, she spoke. "I don't have money," she said. "I don't have a place." Her voice was soft but filled with something heavy, like sorrow, like fear. "I just needed somewhere warm." Jack nodded slowly. He didn't know who she was or where she came from, but something in her voice made it hard to say no. "You can sit," he said, sliding his coffee toward her. "Want some?" She looked down at the cup like it was treasure, then shook her head. "I just wanted to be near someone who wouldn't hurt me," she whispered. Jack frowned. Now he was truly curious. This wasn't just some traveler. There was pain in her, words, something deep, something she was running from. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then said, "Vela." Her fingers trembled as she pulled back her hood, revealing her full face. She was beautiful, but not in a loud way. Her beauty was quiet, like a song only heard at night. Her skin shimmered faintly, and her eyes were large and bright like starlight trapped in glass. A long scar ran across her cheek, almost hidden by her silver hair. "Jack," he said. "Nice to meet you." "Vela," she smiled. Just a little. It looked like it hurt to smile, like she hadn't done it in a long time. Silence fell between them again. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, her hands wrapped around the warm cup he gave her. Not to drink, just to feel the heat. Then, as if she couldn't hold it inside anymore, she leaned forward slightly, her voice barely louder than before, and whispered, "Let me belong to you, human." Jack blinked. He thought he had heard wrong. "What?" he asked, surprised. Her eyes met his, and this time they were wet with tears. "I don't mean like a slave," she said quickly. "I mean, let me stay near you. Let me follow you. I've been owned before. I've been beaten, used, sold, forgotten. But you looked at me like I was a person." Jack didn't speak for a moment. Her words hit something deep inside him. He had flown past wars, past empires, past dying stars. But he had never seen anyone look so lost, so fragile, so brave. "I don't know what you're running from," Jack said softly. "But if you need a place to breathe, you can sit right there for as long as you want." Vela closed her eyes and a tear rolled down her cheek. Not of sadness this time, but maybe the start of hope. The night outside the coffee shop grew colder, but inside the small booth, something warm had begun. Jack didn't know what to do with her words. Let me belong to you. It wasn't something people said, not anymore, not like that. But Vela wasn't like anyone he had ever met. She sat across from him, still holding the warm cup of coffee in her hands. Her cloak dripped onto the floor, her silver hair stuck to her cheeks. Her eyes, deep and glowing, didn't leave his face. She looked like someone who had nothing left, and for some reason Jack didn't look away. Why me? He asked quietly. I'm just a pilot. You didn't turn away, she said. Everyone else saw me and looked through me. You looked at me. Jack leaned back in his seat thinking. He had seen a lot of things in his time. War zones, dying stations, angry aliens, and greedy humans, but the way this woman spoke, it was like every word carried weight, like she had lived through more pain than she ever should have. Where are you from? He asked. She hesitated, then looked down. My homeworld doesn't exist anymore. She said it like a fact, not a tragedy. Zirel 3 was glassed by raiders 2 cycles ago. They came for the crystal mines, killed the leaders, sold the survivors. Jack's face darkened. He had heard of Zirel 3, a peaceful trade world known for its gardens and soft-skinned people. It wasn't a place of war, but greed didn't care about peace. You escaped? He asked. Barely, she said. I was one of the last taken. I was sold to a slaver ring, forced to serve in a noble house on Karanis Prime. She looked up at him again. I wasn't treated like a person. I was called it, and punished for speaking. Jack clenched his jaw. He had no love for the outer system elites. They used power like a toy. He could imagine what they did to someone like her, delicate, beautiful, quiet, and powerless. How did you get away? One of the servants helped me, she said. He left a tunnel open during a storm. I ran, hid inside cargo ships, traveled between ports, always hiding, always silent. She looked around the coffee shop. This is the first place I sat. Without fear, Jack was quiet for a moment, then asked, Why say those words to me? That I could belong to you? She touched the side of the cup again as if searching for warmth. Because I don't know how else to ask to be kept safe. I don't have a home, or money, or a name that matters anymore. But when you looked at me, I felt human again. Jack leaned forward, elbows on the table. Well, you're not human, he said, trying to smile, but I get what you mean. For the first time, she laughed softly. It was light, like glass wind chimes moving in, the breeze. I know I'm not, she said, but you are, and humans are strange. You build weapons but rescue strangers. You destroy planets but raise children with kindness. You confuse me. Jack chuckled. We confuse ourselves, he said. Then, looking at her again, he added, Vela, I can't promise anything big. I don't have power or credits or a station to offer. I don't want power, she said quickly. I just want a place to rest, even if it's the floor of a rusty ship, even if it's behind cargo crates. Just let me be near someone who won't sell me. Jack let out a breath. All right then, he said. You can come with me. But we'll need to be careful. There are people who still track Zirel survivors. And if you escaped slavery, someone might still be looking. Vela nodded. I know, she said. But if I'm with you, I'll take that risk. They finished the coffee in silence. Then Jack stood and offered his hand. She looked at it for a moment, then slowly placed her hand in his. Her skin was cool, smooth, and faintly glowing under the dim light. As they walked out into the night, the rain had slowed to a soft drizzle. Jack led her to the landing pad nearby where his small cargo ship waited. It wasn't much, just an old patched-up freighter with one bed and barely working engines. But to Vela, it looked like freedom. When the door opened and she stepped inside, she gasped softly. It smelled like oil and dust. But to her, it was beautiful. She touched the wall gently and whispered something in her native tongue. Jack didn't ask what it meant. He showed her to the small corner with blankets and food packets. Rest here, he said. We fly in the morning. She nodded, sat down carefully, and looked up at him. Thank you, human, she said. Not just for the ship, but for seeing me. Jack didn't know what to say, so he just nodded and walked toward the cockpit. Behind him, the alien girl curled up on the blanket, for the first time in many years. She felt safe. The cargo ship rattled gently in the wind. Its engines were off, but its lights hummed quietly in the dark. Inside, Jack Carson sat in the cockpit, staring at the stars through the foggy glass. His fingers tapped slowly on the side panel. He wasn't sure what he had just done. He had let a complete stranger, a hunted alien girl, onto his ship. But there was something in Vela's eyes he couldn't forget. That mix of fear and hope, like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting to be pushed or pulled, and he had reached out his hand instead. Behind him, Vela sat on a folded blanket in the cargo bay. She had wrapped herself in a thick brown sheet and was staring at a cracked ceiling panel. Her silver hair glowed faintly in the dim light. There were no chains around her wrists, no collars, no commands, only silence and a soft mechanical hum. She didn't sleep right away. Her body was tired, but her mind was racing. Every creak in the ship made her flinch. Every shadow reminded her of the cold halls of Karanis Prime. But there were no shouting guards here. No silent cameras watching her move. No cold hands dragging her away. Only one human. Quiet, careful and kind. Jack eventually got up and walked back to her space. "You okay?" he asked, standing near the doorway. She nodded. "Yes, just not used to this." "To what?" "Freedom," she said quietly. "It feels strange." Jack leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Take your time," he said. "No one's rushing you." Vela smiled weakly. "That's the first time I've heard that in years." They stayed quiet for a while. Then Jack pulled a small metal box from the shelf. He opened it and offered her a snack. Dried protein cubes and a soft bread pack. Vela took it carefully, her hands shaking a little. "Thank you," she whispered. She nibbled slowly, savoring every bite. To her, it tasted better than any royal feast she had ever seen, because it wasn't forced, it was given. After eating, she leaned back against the wall. Jack sat nearby on a crate, watching her closely. He noticed the way her fingers twitched when she was scared, the way her eyes scanned the room every few minutes like she was always ready to run. "You don't have to be afraid here," he said softly. "No one will hurt you." Vela looked at him, tears in her eyes. "I want to believe you," she said. "I really do." Jack didn't say anything back. He just nodded. Sometimes, silence was the best kind of promise. Later that night, she finally lay down and pulled the blanket over herself. Her breathing slowed, her body relaxed, but the dreams came quickly. In her sleep, she mumbled things Jack didn't understand, words from her native tongue, broken, fearful, desperate. She turned in her sleep, her hands reaching out as if trying to escape something. Then suddenly she whispered loud enough for Jack to hear, "No, please, not again. I'm not property." Jack's heart broke a little. He got up, took another blanket, and gently placed it over her. She flinched at his touch but didn't wake. Her fingers curled around the soft fabric, and slowly, the fear on her face softened. Her breathing slowed again, and she slept peacefully for the first time in years. Jack sat beside her on the cold floor for a while. He watched the slow rise and fall of her chest. She looked so fragile in that moment, like a bird with broken wings. Finally, resting. "Who did this to you?" He whispered to no one. He had seen bad things in the galaxy, but what they did to her, it wasn't just cruel, it was evil. The next morning, Vela woke before him. She sat up slowly, looking around, confused for a moment. Then she saw the extra blanket over her and touched it gently. A small smile appeared on her lips, not forced, not fake, just soft and real. Jack opened his eyes and sat up, rubbing his neck. "Sleep okay?" he asked. She nodded. Yes, better than I thought possible. Good, he said, standing. We'll leave soon. I've got a delivery to make to a station on the edge of the sector. It's not fancy, but it's quiet. Will they know? I'm with you? No, Jack said. You'll stay in the ship. Nobody needs to know you're here. You're safe with me. Vela stood slowly and looked out the small ship window. The stars were still visible, endless, bright, free. She had once believed she would die behind walls, unseen and unloved, but now she was in space with a man who treated her like a person, and for the first time the word hope didn't feel like a lie. The cargo ship drifted through the stars, silent and unnoticed. Jack Carson guided it carefully, hands resting on old controls. Vela sat behind him, wrapped in her cloak, watching the space ahead through the front window. For hours they hadn't spoken much, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful, like two storms slowly learning to rest beside each other. After a long pause, Jack looked over his shoulder. You hungry? He asked. Vela nodded. A little. He handed her a food pack. Nothing fancy, just heat-activated stew and bread paste. But Vela smiled like it was a royal meal. She ate quietly, every bite slow, like she was still learning not to rush. Jack watched her as she sat on the floor near the wall, legs folded, hands in her lap. She seemed calm, but he could still see something behind her eyes, a shadow she carried every moment, even while smiling. Finally, he spoke. Vela, I want to ask you something. She looked up. Go ahead. Back on Outpost 9, you said you were still being hunted. He paused. Do they have a way to track you? She froze, spoon halfway to her lips, then slowly set it down. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Yes. Jack leaned forward. How? She hesitated for a long time, then stood and walked to the far corner of the cargo bay, her back turned to him. She pulled her cloak aside, then slowly lifted the back of her shirt. Jack's breath caught in his throat. There, just below her neck, was a glowing mark burned into her skin. It wasn't just a scar, it was alive, pulsing faint red light like a heartbeat. What is that? He asked, stepping closer. It's called a trace sigil, she said, her voice trembling. They burned it into me when I was sold. It links to a system run by slaver networks. Anyone with the right scanner can see where I am. If I'm moving, if I'm resting, even if I'm breathing. Jack stared at the glowing symbol. Sharp lines and alien letters formed a cruel brand. It looked like chains woven into a circle, endless, unbroken. He felt rage growing in his chest. Can it be removed? Vela lowered her shirt, turning toward him. Only by someone with forbidden tech, or someone willing to risk their life. Tampering with it can trigger alerts. If they notice interference, they'll know I'm trying to hide. Jack shook his head. This is worse than I thought. I didn't tell you before, she said, her voice heavy. Because I didn't want you to send me away. Jack's eyes narrowed. I'm not sending you anywhere, he said firmly. But this changes everything. If they're tracking you, we're both in danger. Every port, every scan, every station we land on, someone might notice. Vela nodded slowly. I understand if you want to drop me off somewhere safe. He stood silent for a moment, thinking. Then he looked straight at her. You're not cargo, Vela. I don't dump people just because things get hard. Her eyes widened, her lip trembling. You mean that? Yes, he said. But we need a plan. He went to the console and started typing, pulling up old contacts, encrypted forums, deep space black market tech boards. If we can find someone who's worked on these sigils before, maybe they can help. There's one, Vela said softly. A man called Argon Shale. He used to build tracking systems for the trade lords. Then he disappeared. They say he lives in a hidden station inside the Rift Belt. Jack raised an eyebrow. The Rift Belt? That's a mess of collapsed tunnels and dead satellites, I know, she said. But if anyone can remove this mark, it's him. Jack leaned back in his seat, sighing. All right, then that's where we go. Vela blinked, surprised. You'd take that risk? Jack met her gaze. You trusted me with your story. Now I trust you with mine. I've done many things I'm not proud of. Maybe helping you is a way to fix something in me too." She smiled through tears. "Then, I'll guide us," she said. "I remember the path to the rift." Jack nodded and adjusted the ship's course. As the stars shifted in the view ahead, the engines powered up again. The ship turned away from the trade routes and into the darker zones of space. Behind them, far across the system, a blinking red light lit up in a slaver ship's console. A low-ranking hunter stared at the alert. "Trace sigil active," it read. "Subject location, moving." The chase had begun, but Vela was no longer alone. And this time, she had a human who would fight for her. The cargo ship moved quietly through deep space. No lights blinked on the outside, no signal beacons were active. Jack had turned off every tracker and ID tag. He didn't want anyone knowing where they were going. Not while Vela still had the mark on her back inside the ship. The mood had changed. There was still peace between them, but now it was filled with tension. Like the silence before a storm, Jack barely slept, checking the scanners every few hours. Vela tried to stay calm, but she could feel it. Danger was getting closer. They had just entered the outer edge of the rift belt, a twisted zone of old satellite wreckage and broken mining tunnels. Jack had to fly slow and careful, dodging debris and navigating blind. Then, a sharp beep echoed from the ship's console. Jack rushed to the controls, frowning as he read the signal. "Encrypted. Burst transmission," he muttered. "From a bounty server." Vela came to stand beside him. "What does it say?" Jack tapped a few keys and opened the file. It was a hollow poster. Her face was on it, clearly scanned from an old security cam. Her name was written in bold alien script, followed by the words, "Escaped property, 15,000 credits alive, 5,000 dead." Vela stepped back, shaking. "They're serious," she whispered. "They've raised the bounty again." Jack stared at the screen, fists clenched. 15,000 credits, he said. "That's enough to make every lowlife in the sector start looking for us." She looked up at him. "You should leave me somewhere, hide me, or just let me go." "No," Jack said without hesitation. "Now more than ever, I'm staying with you." But not everyone shared his loyalty. A message came in just hours later, from a port worker Jack had known for years, a man named Brenner. They had done small trades together, fixed old freighters, shared drinks at dusty cantinas. Jack trusted him, so when Brenner messaged saying, "Come refuel at outstation K9, it's quiet and safe," Jack believed him. He landed the ship carefully. At the edge of the station, the place was quiet as promised. Rusty walls, flickering lights, and slow-moving repair bots. Nothing seemed dangerous. Jack stepped out alone, telling Vela to stay hidden in the cargo bay. He walked to the dock office where Brenner waited with his usual grin. "Jack, you old smuggler." Brenner laughed, slapping his shoulder. "I heard you needed a quiet place, and you know me, I always help friends." Jack smiled, but he noticed something. Brenner's eyes kept drifting toward the ship behind him. His grin felt too wide, too fake. "What's the catch?" Jack asked carefully. Brenner laughed again. "No catch, no catch." But then his hand moved to his belt. A small red beacon blinked on his wrist. Jack's heart dropped. "You called them?" he said quietly. Brenner shrugged, not looking sorry. 15,000 credits, Jack. Do you know how long I've been working this dead-end dock? She's just an alien. You could get another." Jack didn't respond. He turned around, walked straight back to his ship. Brenner shouted behind him, "Don't be stupid, Jack. They're on their way." But Jack didn't stop. He ran inside, slammed the door shut. "Vela," he called out. She ran toward him, fear already on her face. "They're coming," he said, grabbing the flight controls. "We need to leave now." She didn't ask questions. She just ran to the seat beside him and strapped in. Engines roared as the ship lifted off the pad. Red alarms flashed through the station as bounty hunters landed near the docks. 2 ships, sleek, fast, armed. Jack pushed the thrusters. The ship shook as it darted between metal beams and broken walkways. The enemy ships followed, engines glowing hot. "They're gaining on us," Vela said, voice shaking. Jack flipped a switch. "Hold on." He turned the ship sharply into the wreck fields, a maze of broken satellites, spinning debris, and forgotten drones. One wrong move and they'd be torn apart. But Jack flew like a man who had nothing left to lose. Behind them, one of the hunter ships clipped a metal beam. It spun wildly and exploded in a burst of light. The second ship stayed close, firing warning shots. The hull shook. Sparks flew from the side panels. Jack growled, "Come on, hold together." He pulled the ship upward, spun through a collapsed mining tunnel. The last hunter followed, but just for a second too long. The tunnel walls slammed shut, crushing the ship in a fiery blast. Silence returned. Only the hum of their own engine remained. Vela sat back, breathing hard. "Jack," she whispered, "you risked everything for me." He looked at her, sweat on his brow. "I'd do it again," he said. "I trusted the wrong man, but I'll never stop trusting you." She reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers still trembled, but there was strength in her grip. "No one's ever chosen me before, not like this." And Jack simply said, "Then let this be the first time." The ship floated in silence through a quiet zone of space. The damage from the chase had been serious, but not fatal. Jack had sealed off 2 hull breaches and rebalanced the power core. Still, the ship flew slower now, and every system beeped with low warnings. They had escaped. But only just. Vela sat quietly in the corner of the ship's main room, her arms wrapped around her knees, head resting on them. She hadn't spoken much since the escape. Jack finally walked over, wiped grease from his hands, and sat beside her. "You okay?" he asked gently. Vela nodded but didn't look up. "I'm just tired," she said. "Not from running. From hiding who I am?" Jack looked at her with curiosity. "You don't have to hide anything from me," he said. "You already told me about the brand, the bounty, the past." She shook her head slowly. "There's one thing I didn't tell you," she whispered. "The reason the bounty is so high, the reason they'll never stop hunting me." Jack's breath caught. He waited, giving her time. Vela lifted her head slowly, and her eyes met his. They were glowing again, brighter than before, not just blue, but with swirls of gold and violet inside. "Jack," she said, her voice trembling, "I wasn't just a servant in the noble houses of Caranus Prime. I was taken from 03 because of who I was born as." Jack leaned forward slightly. "What do you mean?" "I'm royal blood," she said softly. "Daughter of the last matriarch of 03. Her voice shook. "My people were peaceful. We believed in healing, not war. But when the raiders came, they killed my mother and captured me alive. They didn't want to sell me like the others. They wanted to keep me as a symbol, something they could control." Jack's jaw tightened. "And when you escaped, they lost their symbol of power." Vela nodded. "They feared my return, feared that I could spark hope among my people again." Jack sat back, taking it in. He hadn't expected this. She didn't act like a princess. She didn't carry herself like someone born to rule. And yet, it all made sense, the way she spoke, the calm in her sadness, the strength beneath her fear. "Why didn't you tell me before?" he asked. "Because I was afraid," she answered honestly. "Afraid you'd treat me like they did. Something valuable, not someone real." Jack looked at her for a long time, then said, "You're not a crown, Vela. You're not a title. You're someone I care about, whether you're a queen or just a stowaway." She blinked, her lips trembling. "You mean that?" "I do," he said. "But if you're royalty, that changes our plan." Vela wiped a tear from her cheek. "There's an old emergency beacon deep inside the rift belt. My people built it before the fall. If I activate it, and if any of them are still out there, they'll come." Jack nodded. "Coordinates?" She got up and walked to the navigation panel. Her fingers danced across the glowing screen. A hidden map lit up, an ancient path leading to a collapsed zone. There, she pointed, Zarel Beacon Temple. Jack stared at it. The place was buried inside broken asteroid fields and gravitational traps. "Getting there won't be easy," he said. "No," Vela replied. "But it's our only chance." They both stood in silence. The stars outside the window looked distant and cold, but inside the ship something stronger was growing. Not just trust, but connection. Jack finally broke the silence. "I'll take you there, even if it kills me." Vela placed a hand on his arm. "You've already given me More than anyone ever has, she said. You gave me my name back, now I want to give something to you. Jack raised an eyebrow. Like what? She stepped closer and with a small smile whispered, Hope. Later that night, Jack sat alone in the cockpit, eyes watching the stars. Behind him, Vela rested quietly, her breathing calm. He thought about everything she had told him, royalty, slavery, escape, and now a beacon of hope buried in a dead system, and still she chose to trust him, not as a pilot, not as a rescuer, but as a human. Jack smiled softly. He had flown through systems full of treasure, but nothing had ever felt as valuable as this moment, and nothing scared him more than losing it. Somewhere far away, a new bounty alert was being transmitted, a direct update to all hunters. Subject identified as Zerel Royal Blood. 50,000 credits alive, 20,000 dead. The hunters would come, and they would come fast. But Vela wasn't just a target anymore. She was something worth fighting for. The ship creaked and groaned as it entered the rift belt's core. Gravity pulled at every panel and the navigation system blinked red. Jack gripped the controls tightly, sweat on his forehead. Vela sat beside him, watching the path ahead with wide eyes. The beacon temple was close now, just beyond a collapsing asteroid field. It had been hidden for years, buried inside rock and metal ruins. But Vela's memory guided them true. She remembered the coordinates like they were carved. Into her heart, Jack didn't speak much. He was focused, but inside his thoughts raced. Would this beacon work? Would anyone come? And if they came, would they be friends or strangers with weapons? Suddenly, a proximity alarm screamed. Vela looked at the screen and gasped. Slaver ship incoming, fast. Jack cursed under his breath. They had been followed again. The bounty was too high now. Every hunter in the sector must have been looking for them. I'll handle it, Jack said, his voice low. Go to the back. Find the beacon controls, activate it. But Jack, now, he said firmly, turning the ship hard to the left. The old freighter shook violently as Jack dodged plasma. Shots. The enemy ship fired again and part of the hull sparked with fire, but Jack didn't stop. He flew straight toward the rocks, weaving between deadly debris. Meanwhile, Vela rushed to the cargo hold. She found the old metal box, ancient, covered in symbols of her people. She placed her hand on it, and the beacon lit up with a soft hum. Blue light poured from the runes, then a soft voice echoed through the room, an old AI guardian of Zerel. Identify royal blood, it said. Vela took a breath and spoke the sacred words. I am Vela, daughter of matriarch Alunea. I call my people home. The beacon glowed brighter and then shot a beam of light into space, a signal older than the war, stronger than any codebreaker. It called across the galaxy. It said, she is alive. Back in the cockpit, Jack's ship was hit again. The hull cracked, warning lights flashed red. The enemy was locking weapons for a final shot. Jack gritted his teeth, ready to die if he had to. But just before the enemy fired, space tore open. A massive cruiser appeared from hyperspace, glowing with royal blue lights. More ships followed, silent, elegant, marked with the seal of Zerel. The slaver ship panicked and tried to flee. But one shot from the cruiser ended it in seconds. Debris scattered into the void. Jack blinked, stunned. The screen lit up with a message. Hold position, defender of the crown. Vela returned to the cockpit, her face glowing. They came, she whispered. Jack looked at her with a tired smile. You weren't forgotten. 2 Zerel soldiers boarded their ship with gentle steps. They bowed to Vela, tears in their eyes. Your Highness, one said, voice shaking. We've waited so long. Vela looked at Jack, unsure what to do. He gave her a nod. Go, he said. You're home now. But she shook her head. No, not without you. I started this journey alone, she said softly. But I found someone who saw me. Not as a prize, not as a ruler, but as a person. They brought Jack and Vela to the royal ship. It was beautiful inside. Soft lights, flowing curtains, peaceful music. He had never been inside anything so elegant. Days passed. The wounds were healed. The bounty removed. The sigil on Vela's back, finally erased. One morning, Jack sat on a quiet balcony of the royal ship. He drank from a cup of warm Xyrel coffee, sweet, smooth, like nothing on earth. He watched stars drift by slowly, then soft footsteps came. From behind, Vela stood there, dressed in a simple white robe, her silver hair braided with golden threads. But she wasn't wearing a crown. She wasn't standing like royalty. She was standing like Vela, the girl he met in a rainy booth. On Outpost 9, she sat beside him and gently placed her hand over his. "You gave me a chance to breathe again," she whispered. "You gave me life." Jack smiled. "I just gave you coffee," she laughed, eyes sparkling. "And you stayed when everyone else ran." Then, softly, just like the first time, she whispered, "Let me belong to you, human." Jack didn't answer with words. He simply handed her his cup. She took a sip, smiled, and leaned her head on his shoulder. No chains, no bounty, no fear, just two people. One human, one alien. Finally, safe, finally free, and finally home.